The MCU has had this kind of wonky era of having a release schedule. There's a lot of films that have moved up, moved down, eliminated completely, but we got a new Captain America movie. Let's talk about it. Captain America Brave New World. This is the follow-up-ish. Even though it's the fourth one in the series, we now have a new Captain America, and those that have followed the Disney Plus TV shows will realize that this is the follow-up of Anthony Mackie taking the helm from that show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I'll kind of keep it simple. It's honestly a slightly simple movie to begin with. So let's talk about 3 things I liked about Captain America, 3 things that I didn't like about this Brave New World. So the first thing that I liked, there is a new sheriff in town, a new Captain America. Following the events of Avengers Endgame, Chris Evans stepped down as the role, and Anthony Mackie has now taken over. One thing that I think they portrayed well is that there is no super serum coursing through this new Captain America's veins. He is all-American, all-natural, and what that means is that you get a couple of action scenes where he has to now approach things slightly differently. So there will be times when he gets hit and you see Anthony Mackie kind of hunch over and give you the old like, oh, I'm getting too old for this kind of thing. And I think it works. It's a fun twist on it. There's a couple MCU heroes that don't have any superpowers, and it's nice to see this different take. Now, the second thing that I appreciated was the action choreography. It is not the second Captain America movie, The Winter Soldier, which I still believe has the best action scenes of any Marvel movie to date, but it's in the upper echelon of the films that they have. You can tell that there is some fun that they had during filming. There was like one move in particular. Let's see if this is going to go so bad. But there was one move in particular where there was a guy in front of Captain and there was a guy behind him. So he has like his shield and he's got his foot. And he does this jump. That's kind of so stupid. But he does this jump and he hits the guy with his arm and he kicks the guy in his leg. And being a normal human, you can't actually do that, but he's Captain America, and it doesn't matter. It still looked pretty fun overall. And finally, probably the biggest surprise of this movie was Harrison Ford. If you watch any of the trailers, you know that Harrison Ford is the Red Hulk, and that's the expectations going into this movie. I didn't realize just how much Harrison Ford was going to be in this movie. He has a very prominent role, and I imagine he cost a lot of money for all the scenes that he's in. But there is actually a successful dynamic between the heroism from Mackie's Captain America, along with the old, grumpy, gruffled, but still you might see that his heart could be in the right place, even though we know that there's a Red Hulk in him, Harrison Ford. And they actually play off of it well. It's not going to blow you away. The characterizations, it's not crazy what they do, but they execute on this simple formula pretty well, and it sets up the stakes pretty well throughout the movie. Now, moving on to the 3 things that I didn't like so much from this movie, starting off with the script itself, and this is by and large the biggest issue that you can have with the movie. I feel like as you look through the credits, I believe there are 5 names that are credited with the screenplay. That's never a good sign. This movie also had some issues in production as well, with a lot of reshoots going on and just kind of the timing of everything. So the writings were on the wall heading into the movie to not have great expectations of this Brave New World. And that's the way that I approached the movie. And even though I was pleasantly surprised with my expectations being met, it was pretty close to the ground floor in terms of where I thought this movie was be at. So it's not actually saying all that much that it met my expectations. And you can see how this movie follows up in many ways of the very like NCIS-like show that The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was. And it kind of has that same sort of espionage as well as character twists and the plot. But halfway through, you know where it's headed, you know what's going on, you know what's happening. There aren't that many surprises, maybe a surprise or two in the first 20 minutes, but nothing that will totally shock you. And you're just kind of expecting it and waiting for it to get to where you want it to go, it's not a crazy story. We'll put it that way. There are definitely times when you can see the rushed visuals in this movie, and it's not an egregious issue. I feel like it's kind of been the known problem of many of the Marvel movies, especially of recent years, and I'm always reminded of when you see like the Marvel logo come in and you see the iconic shots from that first era, that first phase of movies. You could see how much things were thought out. You can see how much planning there was to say this is going to be a money shot. And it feels like we've eliminated a lot of that because we have to get through production, we have to go through it very fast. We need to put this on the blocks because we're setting this next thing up for that thing. And again, I think if you look at the central characters, I think Captain America, the visuals associated with him, very strong. I think they did Red Hulk pretty well overall. So the central characters are given the care and love that they need, but there are some times during the action scenes, and this is probably my biggest knock of the action, where you can tell that they cut away quick in some shots, and it's because they don't want you looking at the scratches beneath the surface. They don't want you looking at the visuals too hard, and so they're hoping that it goes by fast and you get the idea without actually looking at what you're seeing. Not the worst thing, but definitely noticeable. In terms of the supporting cast, of course, one of my highlights was Harrison Ford, but after you get past that, there's not too much going on. Especially if you're talking about the baddies, there's a couple of villains that have to hold the film until it gets to the Red Hulk, and during that time, that is really where I probably have the biggest issues with the forgettable villains and forgettable storylines going on. In particular, the worst one is definitely Giancarlo Esposito. He comes in, he blows stuff up, and then he leaves. And I really think that is not a dramatization of his character. That's basically how that one goes. It's not very well thought out. All in all, the way that I've been telling people before filming this video is that if you approach this movie as a movie critic, you will find issues. If you approach this movie as a Marvel fan and maybe kind of lower the bar a little bit too, you're going to come out and say, hey, that was a fun time. That was a fun movie overall. That is ultimately where we're at with this movie. I'm happy to see the success that it's having. I think it's a good follow-up with passing the mantle, because inevitably with the MCU still wanting to be the MCU, you have to do that. You can't just keep these actors, unless you're Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, under contract until you're 90 years old. So we had to move on from Chris Evans at some point, and I think this is a manageable way to do so. Beyond what I mentioned earlier in this video, there's also a couple of moments for you to hold on to start pinpointing, oh, okay, this was because of this, we're maybe going to head this direction because of that. So it's also setting the stage for a couple of things. Even if the end credits was superfluous and a little disappointing, it was like, okay, thank you so much for making me watch the credits for that. But that's okay. Again, not a crazy movie, but it is an entertaining experience, and I think that's why it deserves its 6 out of 10. We'll see where Marvel heads from here. There's some things up in the air with its future, but there's also reasons to stay positive, and I think this movie is a reason to do that. That'll be it from me. Thanks everyone. See ya.